discussion about what is the funding formula, it's often cast in terms of how does money filter down through the system, how is it allocated. And we do have an entity in this province called the funding allocation system, which is often described as the funding formula, but it's really an allocation formula. It's not so much a formula that will determine how much money flows into public school education, but how a fixed quantum or amount of money is actually distributed amongst the different school boards and within school boards in terms of providing a public school system on the ground in the different communities of the province. The current model that we have in this province is really, I would argue, an outgrowth of recommendations that were made in 1989 in the Sullivan Royal Commission report. At that time, BC had come through a fairly tumultuous period of conflict and disruption in regards to public schooling, much the same as today, one might argue. In fact, when you look back, you begin to wonder, was it ever any other way? But the Sullivan Royal Commission came up with recommendations. Figure out what the mandate of the school is. What are our schools supposed to be doing, first of all? Second of all, figure out what does it cost to fund the mandate? And then three, figure out a way of indexing or of adjusting those costs over time to reflect the reality of price and cost changes throughout the system. So those were the recommendations of the Sullivan Royal Commission. We never actually got that in reality. We got what I would call a mutant version of those particular recommendations. It's kind of a bastardized outgrowth whereby we get a fixed quantum of money, as I've described before, which is determined politically on an annual basis and is provided to the school system, but it bears very little, if any, connection to the reality of the cost of providing that education. It bears very little, if any, connection to the underlying mandate of the public school system. And so in effect, what we have is an overarching, highly centralized system of funding control, where absolute funding control rests within Victoria at the provincial government level. Funds are allocated to school boards, and school boards are essentially obliged to make do with fixed amounts of money that are provided in a context where the amounts of money made available bear little, if any, real connection to the underlying dynamic of cost and what drives cost at the school board level.